watching that
wheels.
countdown was really funny because Jeff and I always have a thing with the Wayne's World countdown. You know, the 5,
Yeah.
4,
Oh,
3. Yeah.
you don't say it.
You don't say 2 or 1.
Yeah. Welcome back to Popcorn Therapy, where we talk about therapy in pop culture and we use pop culture as therapy, among other things. And today's going to be a little bit different because I have guests today. Usually it's just me. And I have Mel and Jeff here. We're going to talk about Wayne's World, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, probably. And apparently theirs too. So do you guys want to introduce yourselves? Just talk about a bit about what you do.
Sure. We are a brother and sister team of marketing people. We run a mostly social media and a email marketing agency in Vancouver, and we've been doing it for about 3 years.
And Jeff and
Very
Mel
nice.
do my social media, which is an incredible gift and blessing because they are amazing with visuals and just understanding that world, so I don't have to worry about it. And I really appreciate how Mel specifically, I think, like pulls out quotes and things that I wouldn't necessarily have thought of in my writing and shares those in a really beautiful way. So if
Thank
anyone is
you.
looking for social media, I highly recommend Rara is the name of their company. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julie.
Of course. Yeah. Plus,
Oh,
they're
my
good people,
my phone's
right?
blowing up.
Yeah.
Oh,
Good.
shit. That stupid joke ruined you complimenting us.
Okay, so let's talk about Wayne's World. I have a couple of questions for you, and we'll just kind of roll with it. But my first question for you is, how has Wayne's World been therapy for you? Or like, tell me about your relationship with Wayne's World.
Well, I don't know. I think you were into it before I was because you're 28 years older than me, Mel. And
Not
that's how I got
really.
into it. But there was a time, like when I was maybe 15, where I was really into it. I maybe watched it on maybe 50 times that year, like was just obsessed quoting it. Therapy wise, I don't know. I mean, it's really a mindless kind of a toss on and just sort of zone out movie, you know? You don't have to think too much.
Yeah, I just watched it before we even talked about doing this. I was watching it like maybe 2 weeks ago, and I hadn't seen it for probably 15 years or something. And I was shocked as I was watching it to realize how much of my like daily references come from Wayne's World. Like it was like every 4 minutes in the movie, it was like, oh yeah, like the countdown. I do the countdown. I do the like, so many things. The suck cut. Our grandpa, he was like a crazy, he was a crazy inventor. Like he made bizarre things. And among the things that he invented was literally a suck cut. He found an old helmet and drilled holes into, he found it on the side of the highway, and he drilled holes into it and then sucked his hair through it with a vacuum and cut his hair. And I remember him coming over to my mom's house one day, and he had this like cool hip haircut, and I was like, oh my God, Grandpa, do you have a new barber? And he was like, no, telling me all about this suck cut that he invented. He didn't call it the suck cut, but it was the suck cut. And he had calculated to the cent how much money it was going to save him over the next like 15 years or something.
Wow.
So there's just like so many things in the movie that are like just like part of our lives, I think. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're not worthies of
Yeah.
say it a lot.
Yeah.
I think the reason we say mental a lot is because of Wayne's
Absolutely.
World.
Right.
100%. Yeah.
And we just did a video on our social channel for Rara Creative Co. of us recreating the airport scene where
Yeah.
it's Garth and Wayne, with the airplanes flying above.
And
Yeah.
how cool Cassandra was. Like I feel like
Oh,
probably it seeped into me, and like that's part of the reason why I started playing music was just to be Cassandra.
absolutely. I would still wear like anything she wears in that movie, like the
Oh my God.
90s hot
Yeah.
lace
The
corset.
blue, the blue lace and the blue leather pants. Yeah.
Yeah, she looks so good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I disagree that Wayne's World is mindless. I think actually part of the reason it got so popular is because it has this heart sort of hidden inside of it. And just in case anyone listening doesn't know, the general recap of this movie is that Wayne and Garth are best friends, and they make a show called Wayne's World out of their basement, and then Benjamin
Yeah,
Benjamin
Benjamin.
Benjamin comes in and takes over the show for his benefit. And basically, one of the morals of the show is that money can't buy happiness, But I think it's also about friendship. And, I'm kind of curious what you guys think about Wayne and Garth, the male friendship between them. There's this really sweet moment after they have that fight over this thing that's happening to the show, and Garth is uncomfortable with it, and Wayne doesn't really understand that they're being taken advantage of. They have this massive fight, and then the next day they go to Stan Mikita's, which is a coded Tim Hortons, because this is a Canadian movie based on Mike Myers' childhood. And I think it's Wayne just says buds and Garth says buds. And that just completes their issues. And I don't know, I feel like you just get this sense that Wayne and Garth are like soulmates kind of, and they really love each other for who they are, even though they're so different.
I I've experienced that exactly in a friendship, like a male friendship. I've like no joke got into fist fights with friends, and the next day it's like we're good, which is crazy. This is 20 years ago. I have to say that so that nobody thinks I'm out there fighting every weekend.
Right. Yeah, and I know, Jeff, you and I both dressed up as Wayne's World characters for Halloween.
Yeah.
So,
Were you
I'm
Wayne
thinking
as
about,
well?
I was Garth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you sent me the. Did you?
Yeah, so,
Maybe.
it's interesting because I loved Wayne's World when I was like a child, like, I don't know, 10 or so. I don't know exactly how old I was, but I was not yet a teen. And this is a movie that definitely teens seem to be more into. And I'm not totally sure why I loved it so much as a child. And sometimes some of these 80s movies, I do suspect there's a little bit of like the bisexual awakening thing that happens with certain of these movies, or there's like a little bit of erotic energy that when you're a child, you don't quite understand, but you're like very fascinated by. And I think
Yeah.
Cassandra was sort of doing that for me. It's like, she was just so cool,
Yeah.
just like fascinating character. But that's not even necessarily what I remember the most about the movie. It's Garth. And I think, Garth is like who I really am on the inside is how I feel about it. Like Garth is my true self, the self that's like hidden behind, all of the functioning stuff that I do and like ways I try to be normal in front of people. There's like a real Garth underneath there, I think, for me. And so I dressed up as Garth for Halloween when I was in university. And, I have this whole theory about Halloween, that it's like a time where you can dress up as you're not dressing up as something you're not, you're actually dressing up as something you are. I think we like to dress up on Halloween to express an aspect of ourselves that's usually hidden. And so it was this time in university when like everyone else was a sexy nurse or a sexy witch or like a sexy whatever, like all the girls were wearing really revealing outfits and stuff. And I had done that other Halloweens, but this year I had like the crazy hair. I can't remember if I had the Wayne's World hat. I must have, but I looked like Garth and I was embodying that, and I remember having this really interesting experience where I was at a party and there were a group of guys surrounding my two friends who were dressed as sexy, nurse and sexy, chef or whatever they were. And I kind of went up to this group and they were laughing and I was like, ha ha ha. Immediately everyone stops laughing and like the group disperses. And I was just like,
you were Garth.
because I was Garth, yeah. And it was like it was interesting because I had been those sexy Halloween things before, I had never had an experience of being an awkward boy on Halloween before. And I've done it other times. Like I've often liked to dress up as male characters on Halloween. And when it's convincing, I get treated so differently. And I think that Garth moment was one that I wasn't necessarily offended by it. It just really made me think like, wow, there is a way that I'm being received in the world as a woman at the time, a young woman, a thin woman, a woman who would dress a certain way. People would pay a certain kind of attention to me. And when I'm Garth, wow, is it ever a different experience? It just kind of opened my eyes to like what it would be like to really present that way.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think it made me love Garth more, actually, that experience.
It wasn't not only that you were dressed as Garth, but you were acting like Garth.
Yeah.
Right? So you
Of course.
came up
How could you not? You have to.
awkwardly.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so it was more than
Yeah, we
just
we
that.
fear change.
Yeah, I like that.
I love that. Yeah, I feel like they're like, whenever in the movie, whenever they're separated, it's kind of strange. Like they kind of belong
Yeah.
together. They so play off each other's energy. And like,
Hmm.
yeah, Garth, in those moments where he's alone, like when they leave him, when
With
they
the
leave him,
camera?
when, yeah, with the
That's
camera and
exactly what I was
He's
saying.
so
like inching
uncomfortable.
back onto the couch, he's
Yeah.
so uncomfortable. Yeah, I can, yeah, I didn't really think about it like that before, but yeah, I can see how he's the deep-seated, like, underside of your psyche. Garth.
We all have an inner Garth, don't we? Like we
Yes.
all have that that just like very strange aspect of ourselves that
Yeah.
just is. And I mean, again, I love that friendship because Wayne is more the cool guy, I think. Like he's
Yeah.
so much more comfortable in social situations, and
Yeah.
he's able to kind of hit on Cassandra in this way where like he ends up dating her and so on. And Garth has some interesting adventures with romance, I think, that are also kind of fun to think about.
Yeah.
He has that dream woman,
Dream
Foxy.
Woman.
yeah,
Yeah.
the lip syncing to the song to her, and like the way
Yeah.
the wind is blowing in her hair and everything. In Wayne's World 2, he has a very funny scene with I think it's Kim Basinger.
Yes.
And they're dancing together and he's like, "You're all wiggly." It's like,
Yes.
it's I don't know, there's something so sweet about that awkwardness being quite
Oh,
endearing, right?
yeah.
I
When he
don't think
tries
I.
to be cool in Wayne's World too,
Yeah,
dressing for her, dressing the way she wants him to dress. Oh my
right,
God.
right.
How many
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
times do you think you've seen Wayne's World 1 and Wayne's World 2? Like, separately.
Oh, Wayne's World is one of my sick or sad movies, I would say. Like, it's one of the movies that will cheer me up when I'm feeling down. So I'm gonna say countless. Like, I don't really know. And I mean, it's to the point where I think with you guys, it's been a while since I've seen it the last few years, but it's
Yeah.
the cadence of the movie is in my head. It's like programmed in there,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
the music and the cadence of the way that they speak.
Yes.
Um,
You can almost recite it. It's like
yeah,
the
you could lip
pattern is
sync
in
it.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
pattern, exactly. Yeah, and speaking of lip syncing, I think my favorite scene with Garth is when they're doing the Bohemian Rhapsody scene in the car, which
Yes.
apparently Mike Myers really fought for because Penelope Spheris, the director, wanted a different one, but he was really,
A
really
different
insistent that it be
song?
that one, a different song. And
Okay.
apparently there was sort of a resurgence in people's interest in Queen after the movie
A
came
hundred
out.
percent.
And Freddie
Hmm.
Mercury died while it was in production, so there's this whole relationship it has
Oh,
with Queen.
But I read that he saw a preview of it. He saw the preview of that scene literally
Right.
on his deathbed.
Yeah,
Yeah. And loved it.
there's a legend that he's seen it, but it may or may not be true.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah.
Yeah, who knows?
that
But
that was my introduction to Queen, is that
right,
song through
Yeah.
Wayne's World.
yeah, yeah. So in that scene, Garth is singing along with everybody else, but he kind of can't remember the words, so he's just mouthing the words while everyone else is singing. And I found out that actually that was Dana Carvey actually didn't know the words and was just kind of trying to get away with it. And apparently he was quite upset that they wanted to use that scene in the final cut.
Oh,
But I would say it's one of my favorite parts, so I'm so glad they left it in.
yes.
Now that I'm thinking about this, what we're talking about, I'm like, I have to rewatch it, and I just watched it
Hmm.
because you're
Yeah.
so right about all those things, like
Yeah.
them being different together and like feeding off each other's energy. Like it's so true. I was watching. I was watching and I was doing things, and Garth like holding the hammer with that like robotic arm when Benjamin comes up to talk to him. Like that's what I thought of when you said that. Just when they're apart, it's so different, right? That's when he says we
Yeah,
fear change,
Yeah.
yeah,
right?
yeah.
I love it.
So if my theory is correct that Halloween is a time to dress as who you really are, Jeff, what did it mean to you to dress as Wayne?
Yeah,
Jeff is the Wayne.
Jeff is the Wayne.
In the rah-rah sphere, Jeff is the Wayne and I am the Garth, I would say.
elaborate. What do you mean, Melzy?
You're the more you're more comfortable in social situations. You're more likable generally. I am weirder and darker and harder to get to know.
Oh, that totally makes sense to me. I can see that immediately, Mel. I totally agree with you. As someone who holds a Garth very close to my heart. But, the thing about Garth, though, in that movie, too, is like he has these moments where he's so capable. Like there's a scene when they're in the metal bar and some guy tries to knock over Garth and he comes up with this like taser or something, this tool, and he just switches it from hand to hand, but it sort of looks like he's doing this really fancy thing. And he kind of has these moments where he comes through and he's just like, I'm Garth, though, and when they're doing the little piece at the end where they're trying to get Mr. Big to hear Cassandra speaking so that Cassandra forgives Wayne and, all of these things, Garth leads this whole heist like thing where he has all this knowledge and all this capability and all of these talents that are kind of hidden underneath that awkward exterior. And I think that's maybe part of what I relate to it as well, is that I honestly do think that, like, no offense to the Wayne in the room, but, the awkwardness, the weirdness, there's a depth there, right? Like there's often something really interesting for me about people who are a little off the beaten path or who are a little bit, not necessarily that one who's super charming, out in the front of everything. And not that those people can also have depth. But often I find that it's in those weirder, darker places that you also get these really interesting talents or, perspectives or whatever it is that don't necessarily come out in the other time. And I feel like that's part of what Garth is for me too.
Yeah.
So, maybe that's partly why the two of you work so well together, because you have these different energies that you bring.
Yeah, totally. And I think too, like a Wayne, I'm quoting, a Wayne now is kind of only seen as those surface things too, right? Like charming and funny and like comfortable with people, but Wayne has depth too. There's moments of seriousness between him and Cassandra, and he like learns another fucking language to like get this woman who he really is interested in, right? Like, so he does have these glimpses of him being much deeper than this kind of shallow exterior too.
Yeah, and I think that's another reason why, I think Wayne's World did so well, is that depth. And, so apparently Mike Myers had a cable show for a little while. It was like Mike's
In
Minute or
Canada?
something like that in Canada. Yeah. So he actually, it was really kind of based on his experiences. And there are a lot of little coded Canadian in-jokes like the Stan Mikitas and stuff like that in the movie. But I think it's sort of based on his life and his experiences. And this was one of the first movies that was kind of based on an SNL skit that was pretty surface. It was just Wayne and Garth like playing around. But when we get to see the movie, we get to see like the people behind that. And I think another reason that I think is so interesting about Wayne's World, especially watching it now and doing the work that I do now, which is, I'm a therapist and I work with men sometimes. And, I think men in our culture have a really hard time in a lot of different ways. Like there's lots I could say about this, but, maybe I'll sort of encapsulate it this way. I heard this thing the other day about how teen boys really tend to withdraw during those teen years. That's a time when they stop talking about their feelings. They stop reaching out to their parents about things that are going on with them because they're really getting indoctrinated into this patriarchal sort of structure where men have to really be a certain way. Like masculinity is a very, very narrow thing, I think, in our culture today. There's not a lot of room to be emotional or to be interesting or to be different, for men. And so specifically teen boys will really struggle and withdraw, and they'll deal with anxiety and depression all by themselves because they're not getting that support. And I feel like watching Wayne and Garth, they're close friends. They can talk about anything. They have other relationships with other people in the community. They have lots of friends. And, they're not necessarily talking about deep emotions in Wayne's World, but at the same time they are. I mean, like you said, he and Cassandra have some deeper conversations. They're learning lessons. They're finding out like, okay, what does money really mean? And what does power mean? Like when someone's giving you money and when they have power over you, how does that mean that you lose your voice? And how do I regain that power and regain that voice? Which I think is really relevant even for teen boys today. I don't know if teen boys like Wayne's World now. It's just too old for them. But it just really made me think about that.
Yeah, they also have something that I think a lot of men, boys don't have, which is hobbies. Like they are very interested in music. Wayne plays guitar, Garth plays drums. They have, you know, goals and things. Like they're creative. They're just on their own time making a cable show. Like, and so that's pretty cool.
I really hate that that's what little boys are kind of taught or were taught. And I'm raising two kids, both girls, but it bothers me that that's what little boys are taught to be like,
Yeah,
which
it's
is
horrible.
crazy. It's crazy. And for me, it's hard to reverse that. It's hard to, because that's, I don't know if that's what I was taught, but it's more than just your parents, obviously, because there's so many other influences. But it really bothers me. Like, it's hard for me to show or to cry or to, well, not show emotion, but like for me, like my sad, you know, emotion is often shown as anger,
Hmm.
you know? And I hate that. I hate that.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it's more
there
like
was.
what people show you, like what dad showed you and what other men show you. Like not that somebody's saying you can't cry or anything, but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah, just what you're
I guess it's
shown.
more like our dad would cry at like a funeral. And I remember we would be like, I don't want to sit next to dad at the funeral because he's, I don't know why
It's
we used to
uncomfortable.
say that.
It's the
I guess it's
saddest
because it's
thing to see a
uncomfortable.
man cry. It's the saddest thing to see a man cry because you never see it.
Mm.
Let me
It's
tell
just
you
like
a good
overwhelming.
example of a man holding back his feelings. It was my friend's wedding, and his dad, so the groom's father, he was doing his speech, okay? And he would talk and he said, I'm just so proud of my. He just kept doing that over and over, like he wouldn't let it go. Oh, it was so funny, but now also kind of sad. Like so loud into the microphone, like it was obvious. Anyway, um, yeah,
Yeah, I think
yeah,
for a long time, women could express any emotion but anger, and men could only express anger, no other emotions.
Yeah.
And now men's anger is even more contentious. I think now men are, because of the Me Too movement and all these things, and I'm not saying that, people shouldn't be held accountable for their actions, but that a lot of men can fear showing anything, like including anger, because there is this fear of like, how is this going to come across? Like, I think a lot of men, rightly so, are more aware of the power that they hold over women. And so expressing anger starts to feel like, oh gosh, I can't share that either. But it's not like any of those other emotions have come back as things that they can express either. So it's a real chokehold, I think, for a lot of men in this generation,
Hmm.
just sort of trying to figure out how to be present and emotional. And then you have Wayne's
Yeah.
World, which is, what you were saying, Mel, too, made me think about how it's kind of like maybe if we look at this movie from the perspective of masculinity, we have these two archetypes, and Wayne is who we have to be on the outside, and Garth is who we might be on the inside, right? It's sort of like we
Yes.
need we need there's sort of two sides of the same coin, but it's Wayne who we often see, the one that's making cracking jokes, and being
Yeah.
really confident and all that stuff, but the Garth gets hidden in the background, which, not that Garth is super emotional in the movie, but just that sort of feeling of like, where are those all those emotions? Like, men might not feel like they can really fully express that,
Yeah.
um,
That
depending on the
makes sense.
context.
That makes sense. Another weird thing about the movie was the breaking the fourth wall thing, where they're
Hmm.
they're looking at the camera, like they're looking at the camera, and I think the only other person that looks at the camera is um, Ed O'Neill
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
right
yeah,
when
yeah,
he
yeah,
takes the camera with him,
yeah.
which is so funny. But it's
yeah,
kind of cool that it's like you're a part of it, like you're being taken along.
yeah.
You're in on it. You're in on the whole joke and everything, right? Which is kind of like personalizes it even more, right? Like you feel more connected to the characters.
Yeah, so speaking of the breaking the fourth wall, there's another piece about this movie that I love particularly, and another reason why I think it's deeper than it seems, which is the postmodern ending, the incredibly postmodern ending.
Mm,
So some people didn't like. So for those of you that don't remember or haven't seen the movie, as they're coming to the conclusion of the movie, they run through the ending and they have this really sad ending. It's sort of like it doesn't work, and then the house burns down and Wayne and Garth are saying, "Why, God, why?" And then they're like, "No, let's
Cassandra
not
ends
do
up with
that.
Benjamin.
Let's." Yeah, Cassandra ends up with Benjamin, exactly. and then they say, let's do the Scooby-Doo ending, and they go diddly-doo, diddly-doo, diddly, like do the little, shifting into a different timeline kind of thing. And then they do a Scooby-Doo ending, and then they're like, no, let's do the super happy ending. And then they do the super happy ending where like Garth ends up with Dream Girl, and, Cassandra gets the, 10 album deal or something like
Yeah.
that. Like, it's so extremely outside the suspension of disbelief, right? And
Yeah.
so some people didn't like that because they were like, well, what's the real ending? Like, you're not giving me a real ending here. Like, none of these endings feel like true, the way the rest of the movie kind of felt true. But I loved that about this movie because from that postmodern perspective, like, this movie, which by the way, Penelope Spheris was a documentary filmmaker, the director. And
Oh,
so she came from documentary filmmaking, which is why it has that breaking the fourth wall and following people around and
interesting.
stuff like that. But, the postmodern philosophy kind of says like there is no real, right? Like, what do we really think that we're landing on? And so having this ending and refusing to allow the audience to kind of land on like, oh, that was a real story and everything turned out okay. Like, it asks more of the audience, I think, to really
Yeah.
question like, okay, so what did that mean? What kind of ending did I want? I don't know that people are doing this consciously, but I think refusing to have that clear ending makes the movie so much more complex for me and so much more interesting because it reminds us that it's a story, right? And it's like, this is a story that we're telling, and we're just going to choose the super happy ending because from a postmodern perspective, again, when nothing has meaning, why not choose the super happy meaning? Like, why not end
Right.
on, what feels really good, even though we know it's not true? Like, what's the difference?
Man, that like kind of made me mad when you said that that some people didn't like it. Like if I was dating somebody and was so in love with them, and then they told me that they were mad at the Wayne's World ending because they didn't have a clear, I would break up with them. That's enough. Like that's crazy to me to be. It's like it's clearly like a fictitious movie. Like to be upset about it is so insane. But I believe that there are so many people who were upset about it. Like, yeah, no, that guy's off my list.
That's very Jerry Seinfeld of you, Mel, to do that. I,
Yeah, another thing I found with this movie that I thought was really funny watching it as a kid. I loved it too as a kid, like as a young kid before being. I remember we went to see Beauty and the Beast. We were like, I don't know how old we would have been. And I remember seeing the Wayne's World poster and being like, God, I really want to go see Wayne's World and not fucking Beauty and the Beast. But
that would have been what, the 94 or something it came out?
91,
Wayne's World came out in 1991. Are you sure about that?
1992, sorry. Wayne's World came out in 1992. Yeah, yeah. Um,
Wow.
Yeah, watching it as a kid was so different than watching it as an adult, and especially watching it as somebody who works in marketing, because that whole scene with the advertising where they're not sellouts
Right.
and the little yellow different
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
Domino's box, all the Reebok, like was so hilarious to me. That was one of the things that I thought we should do for a rah-rah social media thing, but how do you recreate that, right? But it's so funny, and especially like at that time too, like in the early 90s when like grunge and all that stuff, and like that was such a huge topic of conversation, was like selling out and like making money off your art. And I feel like that is kind of
And
probably
and
maybe a
that's
reason why Wayne's World was made.
one of the cool ironies of that movie too, because the moral is to not sell out, right? Like the
Yeah,
moral is that, your friendships and community and your creativity matter more than money. And
yeah,
yet they have the product placement moment, and also the movie made a lot of money.
yes,
And then Wayne's World 2, I didn't really think of this, but apparently Wayne's World 2, they had such a bigger budget because the first movie went so well that they went off the rails with, like, I mean, Kim Basinger was in it
yeah,
playing this bit part, like they had a
yeah,
lot of money to spend. And so it's sort of still about that, but the irony is that the moral of the movie, the medium doesn't match the content, right? Like the movie itself is the selling out thing, even though that's the story they're telling. And I think they're tongue in cheek about that, right? It's that same kind of postmodern, like it doesn't really mean anything. So what do we want to make it mean? Which I think
right,
is a good question.
yeah, yeah. Who
Have
knew
you,
there was so much depth to Wayne's World?
It's the
no
Garth
doubt.
in me that watches it and just thinks way too hard about this stuff, guys.
Is this how you Do you think this like do you think this way about everything that you watch? Like, are
Yes.
you always analyzing it and thinking about it? My counselor said to me, because I told her about just how I'm watching The Sopranos for the 10th time, and she said, Why do you think you do that?" And and I said, I don't know. I just, I just love it. And she's like, "Well, there's a reason. Like, there's the people that are really into true crime. Like, it gives you this uncomfortable feeling. It's like it gives you anxiety, and it
Mm.
makes, it's like your comfort. You know, I feel
Mm.
comfortable watching this because I've lived in this moment, and it gives me comfort." And I was like, "Why did you say that?" Because now I think about that a lot.
I think it
You
makes
know?
perfect sense. I have too watched The Sopranos 10 times, and it's like and Wayne's World too. Like, there's all these things that you rewatch. I rewatch things a lot, and I
Hmm.
feel like it's an anxiety response because sometimes I don't have the capacity for a new story. And
Yeah.
also, it's nice to know exactly what's going to happen. Like
Yeah.
anxiety is all about not knowing what's going to happen and being so
Uncertainty.
fucking scared of that, right? But then when you can literally control your environment by putting something on and you know exactly what's going to happen, like with Wayne's World to the point where, like you said, the
You can
rhythm
read
of
it.
it, you can
Yeah. You
almost
can lip
recite
sync the whole
it.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like your nervous system can finally like just calm down.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even
It's
with
interesting
something as
because
violent and insane as The Sopranos, it's same thing. You know what's going to happen. You know what to
you know what's going to
expect.
happen. Yeah. And I think specifically, I haven't watched The Sopranos yet.
Oh
But
my
I
God.
know, I know. But there is something interesting about, if you're rewatching Wayne's World, I think in this era where I think there's a lot of things to be anxious about, there's a lot going on in the world, and watching something that you loved as a child that's so silly and kind of, it has some depth, but it's not, it doesn't, the way that it's choosing the super happy ending, right? Like that's what Wayne's World is about. That's very calming. And like children will rewatch the same movie over and over again, partly because they're learning about predictability and what that means. And they like that feeling of like, I know what's going to happen next. I know this song. And then I think as anxious adults, we kind of lean back on that a little bit. But if you're watching something like The Sopranos too, there's something interesting around like predictability and trauma, right? Or predictability and violence, or predictability and stress. Because if you're able to predict something that's very stressful, that's even more calming for your nervous system that's maybe been through some stressful things, because you're kind of teaching your body like, here's the stress and here's how it ends. There's the resolution. Like we can do this over and over again, and it's safe to do that. It's sort of like a way of exposing yourself to that. And I think that can kind of go either way. It's like, am I re-traumatizing myself, or am I relearning that dynamic in my body so that I can feel calm about it? Maybe it depends on the situation, but there's
Right.
something certainly soothing about rewatching.
And I wonder about, so because some people don't do that. Some people will not rewatch anything. And now I need to start talking to these people more. Like, are these anxious people? Or are these
Well, it's interesting
perfectly
because
rounded humans?
you and I watch things over and over and over again, but you know who doesn't? Our sister.
That's what I thought. I thought that she doesn't rewatch things.
No, she doesn't, and she's the most anxious of all three of us.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I mean, I did hear something recently about how rewatching is associated with anxiety. I've been enjoying rewatching sometimes old movies with my son, who's 3. But I think that he's not quite ready for some of the things that I really loved when I was a kid.
Yeah,
Because I
When
yeah.
there's
loved the
less.
sort of dark 80s, Labyrinth, that sort of thing. And
I watching things that you've seen before being a parent and then after, it's almost a completely different experience, especially if there's a family dynamic. Because things that never resonated with you before being a parent will now,
yeah,
like my love for Tony Soprano, he loves his family so much. That's what his thing is. That's why you love him, even though he's a bastard. He's a murderer. He cheats on, you know what I mean? Not to give anything away, but he obviously kills. Anyway,
From episode
um,
1.
yeah, and now it's different for me to watch The Sopranos because I can relate to Tony and having that love for your kids. Um,
Huh.
Grant, my son, likes to watch these YouTube videos of like people putting together Hot Wheels tracks, or
YouTube's
people
so weird.
doing those like
YouTube's
foam
insane.
volcano things. Or I don't know, like there's just like this weird stuff on YouTube. And I asked him once why he likes this, and he said it really calms me down. He's 3 years
Oh,
old.
Aw.
I was
Oh
like,
my God,
okay, I
that's
get that. I think it's
cute.
a bit like ASMR for him. Like it just, there's something soothing. There's the predictability, like,
Yeah.
all of that stuff. So I think he kind of
Watching
likes it in that
somebody
way.
do something with their hands, like that's
Yeah.
always very,
Whereas a
very
narrative
calming.
is like you care about the characters. There's something at risk. All of those things. You have to find out what happens at the end, and the YouTube
Yeah.
videos don't have any of those stakes.
Yeah. I wonder if
Oh,
like going like I wonder what it would be like to watch Wayne's World for the first time now. You know what I mean? Like I feel like maybe part of it too is reliving your childhood kind of. And like you go back to it's kind of like a simple movie and so you're kind of going back to a simpler time when you were a kid and
Yeah.
like just kind of reminding you of that or something. I don't know. It's
I mean,
Yeah.
possible.
watching it and hearing all these references, I definitely went back to all of those moments, right?
Yeah.
Like even like when I'm out in the world and I see Wayne's World references, like my chiropractor, they have those ridiculously tiny cups, and every time I'm thinking like, if you're gonna spew into this, right? Every time. But also, why do they make those cups so fucking small?
Hmm.
What?
I
Um.
really wonder how much Wayne's World has shaped my personality.
Yeah.
Like the things that I find funny and the things that I say, like, and like, just like being into music and, the fashion and like all sorts of things that just it's part of the collection of things that shaped me and like how bizarre.
Yeah, so my family has this thing I'm sure we've talked about before around classic rock. And my dad's idea about classic rock, which he's talking about, from the 70s, like from when he was younger, and 60s, 70s. And he talks about how it's this nostalgia thing where boomers are always getting fed classic rock because it brings them back to their childhood. And my dad hates it so much. And my brother hates it
Hmm.
too, and he has his own theories about it. And I actually do too, to a certain degree. But what I've noticed and what I feel about that is apparently we do have an auditory memory connection thing where certain songs, or maybe it's again the cadence of this movie that like brings the feelings back of that time. So the
Yeah.
theory is that people love classic rock because it brings them back to high school, which from my dad's perspective is like, why would you want to go back to high school? Like, my God, what a horrible time in life. And I
Yeah.
feel that way not so much about, his 70s classic rock, which was not in our household at all when I was growing up. But, I listened to like a lot of Cake and Portishead when I was in high school. And hearing those songs makes me feel physically ill. Like I feel physically uncomfortable. Because when I was in high school, I had an eating disorder. I had an anxiety disorder that was undiagnosed. Like I was really not having a good time in high school. And it's the last
Yeah.
thing I want to remember, right?
Yeah.
So I think there is that, for some people that's pleasurable to remember a time that felt good or easier or simpler or whatever it is. But that's not the
Yeah.
case for all of us. Some of us being brought back is like, please no, like I don't want to go
Oh
back there.
God, absolutely. But Wayne's World, like we said, is pre high school.
Yeah, for
It's
me,
like,
Wayne's
mhm.
World is like a
yeah,
happier time for sure. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure. Pre
yeah.
high school.
That's interesting. There's so many songs that I just won't listen to. I skip every time because it
Yeah,
reminds me of certain moments, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. There's
Man,
lots of songs that have been ruined for me, and I can't, they'll make
yeah.
me cry every time I hear them,
right.
Which
or,
sucks because they're
you know,
good songs. They're good
yeah.
songs.
Yeah,
That's why
but
I
there's such an
purposely,
emotional connection. Yeah.
when my partner died, I purposely didn't listen to music and I didn't use any perfumes. And I thought it was the smartest thing I've ever come up with because those are such ties to memory, and I didn't want any sounds or smells to be ruined for me. And so that's the smartest thing I've ever done.
I
Grief hack
would
from Mel.
Grief
love
hack.
to know what was going through your mind. I'm like seeing you going through this difficult time, but in your head you're going, so fucking smart that I'm doing this. I'm
I'm so
so
fucking smart.
smart.
I'm a genius. I've figured out grief. Yeah.
Figured it all
Oh,
out.
that's
Yeah.
really funny. Yeah, that's a smart move.
Yeah.
That's a really smart move.
Well, guys, I have loved talking to you both about Wayne's World. That's been so fun to just hear about your experiences with it and so on. So thank you so much for being here, and I'd love to do it again sometime.
Yes. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you so
sounds
much,
good.
Julie.
Okay, thanks, Julie.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.